and welcome back to the channel. Aditi here, and I'm back with some mixed media inspiration for y'all. Today, I am not going to go off the page. I am actually going to be creating two cards, but I will be showing you how to use the embossing powders to create stunning backgrounds. I will be using the Catherine Pooler inspired embossing powders with an olive and on the lake today for my projects. And I will be using a couple of wow products, stencils, and stamps. Now, for the first card, I am going to show you how to create a background using the stencil and then layering some focal elements and completing the card. And for the second card, I will use this sentiment stamp to create a stunning background. So let's dive in. Now for my card fronts, I am using classic Solar Crest cardstock, 110 pounds. And my card fronts are slightly smaller than my card base. So these are 4 inches by 5 and a quarter inches. And I have two card bases prepped here, one white and one black. And these are standard A2 card bases. That's 4 and a quarter inch by 5.5 inch. So setting the card bases aside for now, I will be working on my card fronts. I am going to first nicely rub my anti-static powder on the card front, bringing out my Wow Embossing ink pad and the blending tool that I generally use with my embossing ink pad. I am going to use the Lots of Dots stencil and through the stencil apply embossing ink all over for a nice polka dot effect background. I am going to use with an olive and sprinkle that all over. And I will use my Wow Jewel Heat tool on the second heat setting and emboss this. And with that we have a nice embossed background with all that shine and shimmer and sparkle. Now with that done, I wanted to do a little ink blending. So using the same coordinated ink from Catherine Pooler, which is with an olive, I am going to slightly pick the ink and blend it out on my craft mat and go over slightly on the edge so that I get a nice border, bringing in that ink inwards. But then as it comes within the card, it goes lighter and merges with that white, so it creates a nice little framed border and brings our eye towards the card. And that you can see creates that border, and like I was talking about, brings our eye right in the middle of the card and just creates this illusion of depth. I will use some double-sided tape and adhere the card front to the card base before adding my other layers to the card. Now for the focal, I am going to bring in a contrast. So I will be using Diana's Love for embossing and Catherine Pooler Samba ink just for my inking. So setting the base aside now, I have punched out a few circles from the same cardstock and I want to emboss snowflakes from the Snowy Christmas stamp set onto these circles with Dinah's Love first. Let's a look at our embossed elements. And now I am going to ink blend them as well. So just bringing out my craft mat again. This time I will use the blending tool with the ink left over from with an olive first and slightly add that color to my elements to tint them. So starting in the center, I am going to blend outwards. This creates a nice glow to the snowflakes, and now I will use a different blending tool and go in with the samba ink to create a little edging to these elements. So that instantly accentuates the snowflake and creates a nice focal point. And I'm just going to play around to create a little composition and use foam tape to glue down these snowflake circles. And to complete it, I need a sentiment. So I have a sentiment right here. I have used the Alex Siberia Designs Christmas sentiments stamped and then used the coordinated die to die cut. And I have stamped it with the same ink, Samba, to tie it all in together with my card. And I can just add it right here in the center to frame it and complete it. And with that, this first card is complete. So you see all of that shine, shimmer, a nice embossed background, and that contrast there. I think this is my first ever traditional colored season's greeting card. I always use different color combinations, but this is the first time I've gone in with kind of shades of green and then with the red. Now, this next technique is a classic, my go to technique for card making, especially, and that's resist embossing. So, I am going to be using the opaque bright white embossing powder and the sentiment, the most wonderful from Wow. And I will first emboss using this sentiment and white ink on my card front. I will begin by stamping it, not exactly in the center towards the top, but roughly covering the middle of the card. And with that down in place now, I am going to just ink up the stamp again, but do partial stamping all around this. So it is going to be split, but it will look like a continuous print paper with this technique. To bring it to life, I am going to use On the Lake ink with my picket fence bouncer and apply ink to this panel to color the background. I'm just going to spray a little water to create a nice ghosted effect. and use a napkin to blot it all. Bringing in my black card base, I will now just glue the card front down to the card base the same way I did for the previous card. And you can see with that resist embossing and ink blending, the shadow and ghosted effect quite gives us the winter feel. Now, a card like this doesn't need too many focal elements. I am going to use the same stamp set from Alex Siberia and stamp the word merry and heat set that with on the lake embossing powder. And I will use the coordinating die to die cut this. I will also stamp the word Christmas but on black cardstock with white embossing powder to bring in that black border back. To add a little interest, I am just going to stamp a few stars randomly all around the card and emboss them with on the lake. And so this, contrary to the previous card, is more of a monochromatic card. I have the sentiments stamped here and I'm just going to use some foam tape and uproot the word merry. And I will use liquid glue to adhere the word Christmas. And that completes my second card. Now, both these cards still qualify to be mixed media in nature simply because I have used multiple mediums, I have created layers, and that's what mixed media is. So, I really hope that you've enjoyed the process of creating these two cards today. You can see the completely different looks that I was able to achieve by switching a few techniques and keeping embossing powders constant. I look forward to seeing your creations inspired by my projects. And until the next time, take care and bye bye.